Welcome to the X Global News channel. Let's move on to the news in Ukraine. The group assembled for the development of the offensive numbers up to 70,000 people and is concentrated around Alchevsk. The AFU is well aware of this concentration and has been regularly shelling the outskirts of the city with artillery and HIMARS for the past 2 weeks. According to Russian officers, the forces gathered near Alchevsk were supposed to fight after the capture of Bakhmut, Artemivsk, as the Russian armed forces call it. The PMCs and airborne assault units of the army were supposed to carry out the assault, but they failed to do so. The capture of Bakhmut, which the Russian generals are so eager to achieve, will not give the RF armed forces much in itself. Before Slavyansk-Kramatorsk, which has long been turned into a powerful defense node, Russian troops will have to break through the villages of Konstantinovka and Drushkovka, which were perfectly fortified back in 2015, and since then the entire vast area of industrial zones there has been turned into linked, reliably protected positions. They can be held by a relatively small force of 3,000 to 4,000 trained infantrymen supported by artillery. Up to half of those 70,000 can be killed by frontal assaults there. And achieve nothing, says a Russian staff officer. The Ukrainian military, when asked about the defense potential of Konstantinovka and Drushkivka, answers confidently. For what, but for Slavyansk-Kramatorsk and Konstantinovka-Drushkivka, I do not think at all. Let them get there first, see for themselves, says an AFU officer. Fighting for Bakhmut continues and will become even tenser in the coming days, and Bakhmut itself will surely go down in history as one of the bloodiest battles of this war. The prospects of a Ukrainian breakthrough from Soledar to Popasna, about which we wrote in the last report, now seem very illusory, because this breakthrough will come right up against the Russian grouping prepared for an attack on Slavyansk. All along the line south of Bakhmut to Marinka, Russian troops are trying to advance in small units. Everywhere without significant advances or no advances at all. Attempts to encircle Avdiivka were unsuccessful, and due to high losses in October and early November and the need to relocate troops near Bakhmut, the attack on Avdiivka in December is more of an inertia attack. The Russian armed forces are actively using heavy artillery and aviation in this sector. The intensity of infantry attacks has decreased. The Ukrainian armed forces are not trying to recapture Vodyanoy and Opatny, but rather maintain an active defense around these villages, i.e. they not only defend but also retaliate. To the north of Avdiivka, the Ukrainian army was also able to slow down the advance of Russian forces to the maximum. In Marinka, for which Denis Pushilin had announced successful battles 2 weeks ago, the Russian armed forces offensive was halted. The AFU has made several counterattacks, but as of December 14 the village is still half under the control of the Ukrainian army and half under the control of the Russian army. The Russian armed forces offensive near Ugledar has stalled. Too much effort had been expended on fighting for Pavlovka. Due to the absence of properly prepared military units and bad weather, it was simply impossible to continue the offensive. According to Russian staff officers, fresh brigades are being transferred to the Volnovakha area, and by December 15 the Russian armed forces plan to accumulate up to 12,000 men in the Ugledar direction, who will again try to break through the Ukrainian defense. In the fighting for Ugledar from November 8 to December 8, the RF armed forces lost 1,100 to 1,300 men killed, wounded, and prisoners of war, and up to 3,200 wounded. The losses of the AFU were half that number. In parallel with the accumulation of forces, the Russian command realized the risk of a retaliatory and powerful attack by the AFU on Mariupol from the north and northwest. There was talk of such a development at headquarters as early November. Now the Russian armed forces have switched from talk to strengthening the defense of Mariupol. It will pass not in the city itself but through the settlements Nikolskoynovo Yanisl Malayanisl Kremenivka Privolnoykolinovoy Andrievka. Troops continuing to arrive from Russia are already being relocated to this line. Construction companies from Crimea and Rostov Oblast, as well as units of mobilized troops sent to do earth-moving and fortification work, are carrying out the work. The AFU has accumulated forces in Zaporizhia. Enough to solve large problems, up to the strike on the Crimea. We were waiting for them in September and October, then we recorded the redeployment of manpower and equipment to the area west of Ugledar. Some alarmists, especially Pushilin, were hysterical that an attack on Donetsk was being prepared. My experience tells me that they have not given up Donetsk for nothing now, but with the forces they have, they can break through the defenses west of Ugledar and under Ugledar itself, get to Volnovakha, bypass it and go to Mariupol. The loss of Mariupol would be hard to write off as a goodwill gesture. And it is an access to the sea and an opportunity to destroy the Crimean bridge and cut off the supply of Crimea by land and through the bridge. I am not the only one who sees this threat. That is why we are getting ready to meet the guests. We can hardly stop them, but we can potentially delay them for a week, says a Russian staff officer in the area in question. Let us move on to international news. Saudi Arabia says there are no results from the ceiling on Russian oil prices. Saudi Energy Minister Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman said that the impact of European sanctions concerning Russian oil is still unclear. He said this at a forum in Riyadh. As for sanctions and price restrictions, they have not yet produced clear results, the minister said. Some of these measures were implemented only on December 5, and now we can see a state of uncertainty in implementation, Abdulaziz bin Salman noted. Asked about the possibility of Russia cutting oil production, the prince told reporters, "I will believe it when I see it." According to him, Russia's response to the price cap also adds another layer of uncertainty about the actual impact of the measures. Head of Eurodiplomacy Borrell, EU countries could not agree on the ninth package of sanctions against Russia. The European Union could not reach a consensus on the ninth package of restrictive measures against Moscow. This was reported by the head of the European diplomacy Josep Borrell. The Council of Foreign Ministers of the association started on December 12. Before the event began, Borrell made a speech regarding anti-Russian sanctions. It will be a very long and complicated Foreign Affairs Council, because Iran and the ninth package of sanctions against Russia are on the agenda. We have not yet reached an agreement on it, it is not yet complete, he reported. The diplomat expressed hope that the European Union will be able to agree on a new package of sanctions on December 12 or 13. However, it will be quite difficult. Duda said that Poland has provided Ukraine with $2 billion in military aid. Poland has provided about $2 billion in military aid to Ukraine, Polish President Andrzej Duda said after meeting with German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier. We have to support Ukraine militarily. Poland provides this possibility of military support, including providing its territory for the implementation of this support. We ourselves have sent a huge amount of support to Ukraine by our standards. We estimate it at about $2 billion. That's a very large amount for us, Duda said. News from NYT, North Korea's new missiles could hit the U.S. North Korean ballistic missiles can reach U.S. territory, and the new Hwasong-17 does so by a significant margin. The test specimen flew 998 kilometers during a test on Friday and landed about 200 kilometers west of the Japanese island of Hokkaido. The New York Times points out that active development of this type of weapon began after the failure of U.S. talks with Pyongyang in 2017. Another test of this missile was recently held. The prototype model traveled almost 1,000 kilometers, falling into the Sea of Japan 200 kilometers from the island of Hokkaido. That's the end of the video. Do like it. Write your opinion in the comments. Subscribe to the channel to continue following our news.